A heartfelt thank you to my short attention span audience for giving me 5 to 10 glorious seconds of your time. Your fleeting attention is deeply appreciated. In an age of infinite scrolling, your blink of presence means more than you know. You may have even already clicked away, but your short-lived engagement is forever etched into the analytics. And for that, we are grateful. Are they gone? Okay, let's begin. What do you do when the world says you don't belong? You sew your way in, even if it means cutting up a perfectly good vintage dress. Cue my personal trauma. First, I must dedicate this episode to one of my besties. She's a fanatic for 80s music, and I lovingly tease her for her love of REO Speedwagon. You know who you are, Marcy. I hope you like this one. Let's talk about a film that stitched together style, struggle, and self-expression. What is upcycling? It's when an object refuses to die politely and insists on becoming something more interesting. Upcycling is Earth speak for transformation. The shirt becomes a skirt. The jeans become a diary. It's not just reuse, it's rebellion. Upcycling is when fabric says, I have another life left in me. Upcycling, the human way of saying, this story isn't over yet. But I digress. For many, clothes are just utility. A protective shell against weather and setting. Functional. Done. No need to think beyond the end use, but for some of us, fashion is an expression. And I don't just mean high-end labels. Clothing can say who you are, where you come from, and who you run with, without you ever opening your mouth. If there was any decade that nailed subcultures through fashion, the 80s is way up there. For Gen X, older millennials, and fans of era-defining movies, nothing captures the 80s aesthetic more than the films of John Hughes. These days, we talk about cinematic universes, franchises with shared continuity. But before Marvel made its business model, John Hughes built his own, the Shermerverse. Named after the fictional suburban town of Shermer, Illinois, inspired by his real hometown of Northbrook. This universe became the backdrop for a string of iconic coming-of-age stories. From The Breakfast Club to 16 Candles, Weird Science, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Hughes mapped out teen angst, rebellion, and identity all through the lens of Midwestern suburbia. And at the center of it all, a familiar face from the Brat Pack.
EO11.
No, not the Rat Pack, the Brat Pack. Anyways, it was Molly Ringwald. Ringwald would go on to lead in the film Pretty in Pink. This modern Cinderella iteration follows working-class teen Andy Walsh, a high school student from the proverbial other side of the tracks. Her love interest, Blaine McDonald, played by Andrew McCarthy, comes from wealth and privilege. Together, they attempt to navigate their feelings for one another through a complex web of cliques, class tension, and the emotional turbulence of adolescence. And while their love may have endured social pressure, what didn't survive was Andrew McCarthy's wig, an early ancestor to Tyler Perry's now infamous wig collection. A moment of silence for the scalp underneath it.
Hallelujah.
Turns out after production ended, McCarthy shaved his head for a role in a play, but Hughes wanted to do a reshoot of the ending, and now we have this unfortunate visual memory. Andy, the eclectic and artsy outsider, shows us just how imaginative and self-sufficient she is. She becomes her own fairy godmother, transforming 2 vintage dresses into a one-of-a-kind pink prom gown. It's a moment of agency. Upcycling as self-expression, a visual metaphor sewn into chiffon. And while I respect the symbolism, I'm a sucker for an original classic A-line knee-length cocktail dress. And truthfully, I'm still not sure if I can forgive what she did to that garment. Watch as I raid my husband's closet, rescue a pair of torn and forgotten jeans, and transform them into a whimsical, Glitterati-inspired cowgirl sensation. Here I'm gathering pinspiration to narrow down concepts. I don't have any real structure as to what's going to happen or how these are going to turn. I'm not committed to them being anything other than just hilarious. We'll just kind of maneuver around and work organically and see what we come up with. I have some ideas in my head of exactly what I want to do, and then there's some things that might pop up as I'm constructing and I'm piecing these crazy pants together. So I'm as clueless as you are as to how this is going to turn out. We'll all be surprised together. Here I used a trace and tear paper for my embroidery design. This was a pain in the butt later because I had to use tweezers to remove the remnants that didn't leave with the first tear removal. I placed my hoop and began to chain stitch my pattern. I'm using a hairdryer to speed up the drying process for my rhinestone application. Isn't she cute? This is part image transfer, part painting. This is an image of Dolly Parton that turned into looking like Nicki Minaj, so throughout the project I would reference her as Dolly Minaj. Anyways, I marked out the placements for the next detail and embellished Dolly Minaj's bodice with rhinestones because duh, what the heck do you think we're doing here? The more over the top, the better. My design professor would beg to differ. I don't remember how long this took, but you have the luxury of not sitting through the real-time application for most of this craft project. Like Andy, I didn't have the option of dropping hundreds of dollars on a prom dress. Not because my family was working class. Both of my parents worked in the medical field, so we were firmly mid to upper middle class. But I was a teenager trolling around on a gym floor under fluorescent lights. My mother was not about to justify spending an exorbitant amount on a dress for that. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. My introduction to the sewing machine came from my grandmother and my mother. I've been sewing for as long as I can remember. Doll dresses, bags, and makeshift creations that may or may not have made sense. But I made them and I was hooked. So when my mother suggested I sew my own dresses for school dances, it didn't come with a fight. I embraced it. Every part of it. From browsing fabric stores to choosing patterns, laying out fabrics and rolling it across the cutting table, it was all part of a ritual. I remember wanting to mimic a Versace gown for my high school senior ball. That high gloss chartreuse silk, the dramatic neckline, the elegance, it had to be in a chokehold. But I didn't have the technical skills or the hours to pull it off. From the waist down, it was functional. We'll leave it at that. But when the clock ran out, I pivoted. I reworked the bodice into a sweetheart halter neckline. Part necessity, part creative save. And no, these photos aren't my dress. Just the Versace original that lived rent-free in my mind the whole time. I didn't hit Versace levels, but I was part of a quiet legacy. Girls sewing in their bedrooms, dreaming big, and making it work. And I wasn't alone. TV and film gave us plenty of fashion rebels to look up to. Before she was Little J, the queen of mean, She was just Jenny Humphrey, sewing in her bedroom, hustling to stand out in a world that didn't make space for her. She didn't just wear clothes, she made them. She DIY'd her way into high society, staged an underground fashion show, and made chaos look couture. She was an anarchic force the Upper East Side had to reckon with, including herself. Was she messy? Absolutely. But she was talented and had vision. And that's the thing about young designers. Sometimes the ambition is louder than the hemline. Despite her bad hair extension era, the Jenny character was a fun story arc to follow. Raven didn't wait for trends. She declared them loudly with glitter and a glue gun. While other kids were just hoping their outfit matched, Raven was out here sketching, stitching, and serving looks with psychic precision. Every outfit was a statement, a vibe, a vision, sometimes literally. And even when it was over the top or fell apart mid-scheme, she wore it as a one-of-a-kind. You know, Raven's style, it's not my flavor. It's okay for others, but it's not my flavor. Fashion knows no fury like a disgruntled anti-hero with a needle. Cruella went beyond designing clothes. She launched fashion ambushes. Dumpster finds became runways. Haute couture met street chaos. And everything was stitched with spite, spectacle, and genius. She made drama wearable. Statement pieces weren't optional. They were the whole point. Whether she was upstaging the elite or crash landing into legacy with a flaming train, every look said, "I'm not like the rest of you, and I don't want to be." Petty? Absolutely. Iconic? Without a question. Now, this next example comes from the 90s, and it's probably less known among Gen Z and younger folks. We can thank the unexpected death of a babysitter for catapulting Sue Ellen Crandall into a full-on fake it till you make it plotline. A high school student posing as an executive assistant. She struggles office politics by day and designs an entire fashion line by night. And she can't even legally drink yet. What started as survival quickly turned into self-discovery. Armed with haute couture skills and a sewing machine, Tilly returns to her small Australian town. Not for reconciliation, but for revenge. Every stitch was deliberate. Every gown, a reckoning. She transformed people. It's not the typical teen fashion fairy tale, but it's a masterclass in using fabric as both armor and weapon. These characters weren't just fashion forward, they were fashion rebels. They sewed through expectations, stitched identity into every seam, and made boldness wearable. And just like Andy Walsh, they didn't wait around for a fairy godmother. They became their own. Pretty in Pink may have given us the dress, but it also gave us the blueprint. When the world underestimates you, you don't shrink, you sew. Alright, here's the game plan. Glitter fabric to fill the busted up knee, because if we're patching with sparkle. I created an asymmetrical placement on the bottom part of the right pant leg to make them more interesting, because I guess I thought the pants were boring. I got patches like butterflies and roses, testing what visually works. I used stick and wash away this time to embroider this butterfly. The removal part, let's just say I got in my own way literally. Trust me, it rinsed off clean even though the shot didn't make the cut. I had 2 layers and used an X-Acto knife to reveal the contrasting fabric as well as form the tattered wing veins. Genius. This illustration is pretty but too detailed. I came up with a more practical solution. I kind of like this better. It speeds up the process and still gives me the effect I'm going for. I'm folding this into place how I want it to look on the pants. It gives that pop-up 3D look. I did a fray liquid. I did a fray block on the edges. So yeah, it's very cute. Definitely have to do this applique on something else. Look, here comes the cat, posing like she's just casually wandered in. But let's be real, this is a full-blown interrogation. She's demanding to know why I kidnapped her emotional support human, my daughter, and left her with me, the backup human she barely tolerates. And just to make her point, she knocks over my crafting cup.
She has no idea how terrifying it was.
Have a drink. Calm me down.
Nice.
Really?
Of course I want.
Now, speaking of turning the ordinary into the unforgettable, let's talk about the dress that launched 1,000 wrappers. The Starburst dress has become a DIY legend, a pop culture myth. Proof that with enough time, patience, and sugar, you can quite literally wear your cravings. And several artists didn't just attempt it, they aced it. Emily Seilhamer is renowned for creating a full-length dress using over 10,000 Starburst wrappers collected over 4 years. Her design is sleek and color coordinated, showcasing meticulous craftsmanship. She even crafted matching shoes and a corsage to complete the ensemble. Emily's project gained widespread attention, highlighting her dedication and creativity to upcycled fashion. Tariffs gained recognition for designing a prom dress made entirely from, you guessed it, Starburst wrappers. With the assistance of her mother and friend, she folded and braided the wrappers, sewing them onto fabric to create a durable and colorful dress. Tara's creation ensured she stood out at her proms, especially fitting given the event's Candyland theme. Shana Ryan crafted her own Starburst wrapper prom dress and shared the entire creation process on her YouTube channel, offering viewers a behind-the-scene look at each step. Her project emphasizes both creativity and accessibility, inspiring others to embark on their own DIY fashion endeavors. Okay, clearly I've gone down the candy wrapper couture rabbit hole. Let me gather myself before I try to hot glue a Skittles gown and ruin my kitchen counter again. We live in a world where your outfit can travel farther than you ever will, crossing oceans, borders, and supply chains just to land on a hanger. And that's not always a good thing. With rising tariffs and imported goods, we may end up paying more for less, while local talent sits right in front of us, often unseen and undervalued. Consider supporting smaller and local creators. If you're looking for custom work, sustainable practices, or pieces that reflect your local cultural aesthetic, a regional or independent designer might be exactly what you're looking for. Many sustainable creators work with dead stock fabric, thrifted materials, or even trash to treasure techniques, like turning candy wrappers into couture. In today's world, finding a local creator is a lot more accessible. You can start with platforms like Instagram or TikTok, or even online marketplaces like Etsy, Cartel, Depop, Redbubble, or even Facebook Marketplace. Local pop-ups, fashion shows, and maker markets Instead of buying a dress off the rack, imagine saying, "This was made for me by someone right down the street." Your next favorite outfit doesn't need to come from a warehouse. It might be waiting in somebody's home studio. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by the "buy this now" culture, you're not alone. There's a name for this resistance: de-influencing. It's about questioning the hype, the hauls, and the endless scroll of things we're told we need. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is pause, reassess, and say, actually, I'm good. And if you're choosing to sew, thrift, or support a small designer instead of impulse clicking, you're not just joining an anti-trend. It's style with intention. All right, in this 2-hour segment, which I graciously cut down for you, I start rhinestoning the upper part of the jeans. You're welcome. Next, we fray and distress the edges of the sequin patch. And because necessity is the mother of invention, I whipped out a pedicure rasp to roughen up the denim. Yes, that's right. Feet tools meet fashion. Honestly, the only thing that would have done a better job was the bottom of my late father's feet. And let me tell you, those things had texture. If I had to do this over again, I wouldn't cut so deep into the denim from the jump. I could have used those long strands for more visual interest. But hey, that's the magic of mischief and making things up as you go. And voila, my Dolly Minaj denim fantasy is complete. We've got rhinestones that drip like champagne, a butterfly ready for liftoff, sequins that shimmy with every step, and a portrait patch that says, "Don't even try me." I know they're a lot, but they make me smile, and sometimes that's reason enough to go full glitter rodeo. These jeans, they're upcycled with defiance, patched with personality, and finished with just enough chaos to remind you art isn't always subtle. And I wouldn't normally speak for Dolly, but I think she'd approve. Pretty in Pink is about more than teenage heartbreak. It's about class, creativity, and the choices people make when they can't afford what the world says they need. That hasn't changed. In fact, with global tariffs and price hikes, it's probably gotten worse. In 1986, Andy made her own prom dress because she had to. In 2025, you might need to because the same gown now costs twice as much and still doesn't fit right. Not just your body, not your budget, not your values, your reality. This was revealed in Wall Street Journal. In an article by Shan Lee, due to the sudden 37% tariff on Bangladesh garment exports to the US, a country that once enjoyed duty-free access, factories are bracing for order cuts and financial strain. As the second largest apparel exporter after China, Bangladesh plays a critical role in the global supply chain for affordable clothing, including formal wear. But now, with strained capacity, panicked buyers, and rising production costs, the price tags on mass-produced dresses are climbing fast. It's a clear sign that the global fashion system is shifting, and the burden is landing squarely on consumers' wallets. 1 week after new tariffs hit, the fashion stocks were falling. Brands like Levi's are assembling crisis task force, and small factories across Asia are bracing for shutdowns. With duties now reaching over 100% on Chinese apparel alone, prices are rising, supply chains are shifting, and consumers are quietly being asked to pay the difference. Just like Andy, many of us are back to the cutting table, remaking a life we can afford into something wearable or even worth living for. Tariffs don't check your voter's registration before they hit your cart total. And regardless of your political position, it affects your wallet, your closet, and your creative choices. It's worth talking about. And so we circle back to our heroine, Andy Walsh, a girl from the other side of the tracks, sewing her own dress, showing up in pink like it was armor. When Pretty in Pink hit theaters in 1986, the U.S. was deep in the Reagan era. Wealth was loud, Wall Street was king, and consumerism was having a moment. But beneath that glossy surface, the gap between rich and working class was widening. Andy's story, a creative girl navigating love, identity, and class, wasn't just a high school romance. It was a quiet rebellion in a loud economy. She thrifted, she upcycled, she created, because that's what the moment demanded. Now we're entering our own era of uncertainty. Rising tariffs, inflated goods, global supply chain strain. But we also have something she didn't. Choice. We can choose conscious consumerism over impulse buys. We can choose to support local creatives instead of multinational giants. We can plan for economic shifts, not with fear, but with strategy. Because maybe the new statement isn't just what we wear, but who we choose to invest in when we wear it. Your next favorite look doesn't have to come from a warehouse. It might be stitched in your neighborhood, waiting, just like Andy's. I hope you enjoyed my 80s themed dissertation on Pretty in Pink. This film was never an Oscar winner, but it's fun, lighthearted, and a meaningful part of my early youth. Be sure to check out the artists I mentioned in the video. Definitely visit their YouTube channels to see their amazing creations. Also stay tuned. I'll be uploading more of my commissions and personal projects soon. So thanks.